We're now going to talk about time allocation in the exam. And I first want to draw your attention to this disclaimer. This is only advice. You should do what you think is best for you in the exam, but I think that this is really great advice. Okay. In exam 1, you'll be given 60 minutes, and there are 9 questions worth 40 marks in total. Now, the key piece of advice here is that if you get stuck on a question and are making no progress for about 1 or 2 minutes, so you're kind of stuck, you're not making any progress on this question, you should move on. Come back to it at the end once you've answered other questions you are confident with. And this ties back to what we spoke about in the previous video about the exam technique, and that is you don't want to be wasting time on a question you can't answer when there are plenty of questions you can answer. It's all about maximizing those marks, people. You're in a treasure hunt for marks. Now I'm going to give you a hint here. And that hint is that the last question of the methods exam is very challenging. Try your best with it. Write down all the information you possibly can and give it your best shot. But I want you to refer to the previous page where we spoke about what we spoke about when you're coming across those really tough questions. Draw diagrams, write all the information you can, write any relevant formulas for it. But at the end of the day, if you're finding you're making no progress with these really tough questions, what should you do? You should maybe say, well, I'm not making any progress here. I'm going to instead spend some time reviewing my other answers because that's a better use of my time instead of spinning my wheels on this question I can't get. Ensure you've answered everything you can in the entire exam before attempting the last question. So make sure you've gotten everything you possibly can before you go to that very last challenging question. All right, exam 2 here. The time allowed is 90 minutes. So much longer, you get an hour and a half here instead of just an hour. Okay, there are 20 multiple choice questions, and you should spend no longer than 25 to 30 minutes on this section. If there's 20 multiple choice questions, if you're spending any more than 30 minutes on it, you're probably taking too long on them. Now, never leave a multiple choice question blank. Always guess if you are unsure. Unattempted multiple choice questions make teachers cry. So just give it a crack if you're not sure. Don't just leave it blank. Again, I'm going to put this quote here again. If you get stuck on a question and are making no progress for about 1 or 2 minutes, you should move on. Come back to it at the end once you've answered other questions you're confident with. Don't spin your wheels. This all the time happens with multiple choice questions. You see people just kind of banging their heads against the wall when they can't get it. Now I'm going to give you another hint. And that hint is that the last few multiple choice questions are challenging. This is both true for your Year 11 exams and it's going to be true for your Year 12 exams. We're trying to prepare you for the reality of Year 12 here. So you just need to know that you're going to come across some challenging questions. If you don't know how to answer them, you should skip them and come back to them at the end. Do not waste time. You've probably noticed this as you're going through this semester with your CAT. Sometimes people will just spin their wheels on the very last multiple choice section instead of going on to the extended response questions. And what they're doing is they're kind of putting themselves at a disadvantage because there are questions that they can answer in the extended response, but they've burnt so much time in the multiple choice, they have no chance of answering everything they can. Okay, that's really, really important advice, people. All right. And also use your reading time to determine whether you should leave them to the end. So during your reading time, look at those, last 3 multiple choice questions and say, you know what, these are really doozies of a question. They're meant to stretch us. They're meant to, to make us really think. But you know what? I'm going to leave them to the end. I'm not going to waste my time. One little thing I'll add here, and that is if you're worried that you're going to forget to come back to them, you might like to guess them at the very beginning. So I'll write this here. You might like to guess them as you're going through the multiple choice and then, put an asterisk next to them as well so you know to come back. Or when you do come back to them at the end, you just need to remember to guess them. What people normally do is they do a good job at skipping them, but then they don't even guess them. So you just need to figure out a way to make sure that you guess these questions just in case you can't answer them. Okay, we then go on to the extended response questions. Again, I'm going to put this advice. If you get stuck on a question and are making no progress for about 1 or 2 minutes, you should move on. Come back to them at the end once you've answered the other questions you're confident with. Just because you can't answer one part of an extended response question doesn't mean you can't progress without having answered every question. Look, I just totally butchered that. Let me try again. Just because you can't answer one part from an extended response question doesn't mean you can't answer the next part in the question. Most extended response questions are designed to allow you to progress without having answered every question in it. So what do I mean by that? Well, an extended response question is made up of several parts, A, B, C, D. And you might not know how to answer. So maybe, if I come get a green pen here, let's say you answer part A, hooray. But then you look at part B and you're like, I have no idea. Well, most multiple choice questions are designed, most extended response questions are designed that even though you don't know how to do B, you should still be able to do C and D. So don't think, oh, well, it's all over. I can't get past part B. I'm cooked. Don't think that way. You most definitely will be able to answer other parts in the extended response question. Imagine if you couldn't answer the first part. Imagine if you look at the first part and you're like, I don't know what to do here. Does that mean you can't answer the rest of them? Of course not. It's going to be designed in such a way that you can still progress without having answered that first question. So do not freak out. Please, please, please. Because that often happens. People can't answer the first bit and they're like, well, I guess I can't do any of this. That is not true. And one special instance of this, and I'll highlight this, is pay attention to show that questions. So questions that say, show that such and such. These questions allow you to progress to the next question without having answered the current question, and we'll go through some examples of this later on. So whenever you see show that, normally what they're trying to do is give you a piece of information that you can then use for other parts, even if you can't show that question out. That's what they're trying to do. Okay, so that's just some general advice on how to allocate your time here. Hopefully you found this helpful. And again, I'm going to come back to this disclaimer. This is only advice. Do what you think is best at the end of the day. But I'd really encourage you, make sure you're maximizing those marks, people. You don't want to leave money on the table. You want to take all that money off the table. And by money, I mean marks. Okay, I'll see you later.